on this computer. Hi, I'm RoseAnn Janison, the No BS Psychic for business and entrepreneurs, and the spirit guide to the stars and to your dreams. And we are so lucky today to have with us Rachel Archelaus, and also Adrian. Thank you for joining us. This is great. Rachel has the Intuitive Art Academy, and I'm sure you've probably heard about it right now, but it's this wonderful way of being able to access your intuition and your higher self and get guidance, bypassing your logical mind, and the results are really very miraculous. But she also has the Sephirus, which is a business and spirituality training group, basically. I've been a member for quite a long time, and this is I'm so excited to talk to Rachel today because she is a multidimensional being, and she's an alien, and she has exciting experiences and knowledge and wisdom that she imparts so wonderfully. And so I just want to welcome you, Rachel. And if you'd like to add more about what you do, please tell us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, RoseAnn. You're one of my favorite people ever. And so yeah, it's such a great space to have a conversation. So not really much to add, just all the stuff I do is designed to connect people with their higher wisdom and their higher self. So whether it's business training or psychic development, that's kind of the whole theme of what I do.
Awesome. And Adrian, we're fairly new friends on Facebook, but I know you have the multidimensional you, and I'm so excited to have this conversation and to learn more about you and to get your input on this topic. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
You bet. Thank you. First of all, I want to check. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Wow. Well, thank you so much for inviting me in. I would say the easiest way to describe who I am and what I do is I am a galactic shaman. So just like an indigenous shaman, I work with spirit allies on behalf of others to help them. What people really come to me for is they want to be able to connect with their higher guidance, their spirit guides, astral travel, all of that fun stuff. But they are blocked because they haven't dealt with the negative programming yet and distortion and density in their field. So as a shaman, I do work to help clear that, transmute it. That's my alchemy. And I just happen to work with off-planet advanced galactic civilizations, hence galactic shaman. So that is what I am up to in the world and beyond.
Very exciting. Thank you, Adrian. Okay, so let's get started. I thought that we would just start straight away with a definition of dimensions. What exactly are the dimensions? And anything else you want to add to that, Rachel?
Yeah, well, I don't know if definition is a good thing for me to expand upon, because most of my knowledge just comes from what I've observed personally. I haven't really studied a lot of this stuff because I find studying, at least personally, kind of brings me out of my connection. Like going and really trying to intellectualize a lot of this stuff doesn't really work. Because it brings us in the opposite direction of where we really want to be in a feeling space. So I guess as I'm talking, everybody, just listen with your own feeling space. And if what I say resonates with you, then awesome, it probably applies to you. But if it doesn't, then you're probably going to have a different experience. So there are a lot of people out there who have more concrete knowledge and more scientific knowledge than I do. But basically, how I see dimensions is it's different layers of energy where there are different rules. So in the third dimension, we were used to having a lot of density, and the feelings that we felt and the emotions were very heavy and they lasted a long time, and things were hard, and it felt like we were kind of walking through mud most of our lives. And then in the fourth dimension, you know, things are a little easier. We have less, we're brought down less by emotions, and things, you know, more synchronicities were happening, and people were having a lot more intuitive, you know, just look at the word intuition and how that's so mainstream now and how that wasn't mainstream 15 years ago. And in the fifth dimension, we'll have even less rules, where we can choose not to eat if we want to. We can choose not to have a physical body. We can choose not to procreate sexually, physically. And then as you just go up, we lose our individuality. We become more of an energy body, and we can merge with other beings, and we can have these collective experiences. And then you go up and up and up, and, you know, we're group beings. We are, and then, you know, we get to the whole, where everything is just one, and you can't differentiate anything. There is no personal experience. It's all just one big all that is. So that's like a really quick way of thinking about it. It's like different floors on a building, and there's different rules in each floor, and each one offers its own unique perspective, and each one has its own truth. But then if you move between dimensions, the truth changes, and you get to experience yourself in a different way. And I believe we all have a part of ourself on each dimension. And so we're all multidimensional beings, which I'm sure Adrienne can talk more about too, it sounds. Does that make sense?
I'm muted. Yes, yes, absolutely. And as you're talking, I have that experience too. And I know one time you mentioned that we can flit back and forth from dimensions. And just now I suddenly realized, you know, like that we are all that is, right? So it's basically, we're just shifting our attention to which version of us we want to look at the moment. And I'm so excited by that. It's like, this is wonderful. Adrienne, would you like to weigh in on this?
Oh gosh, sure. I loved, Rachel, the way that you started off with that, because so much of tapping your multidimensional self is not a cognitive process. We have so much innate knowledge at the soul and oversoul level that I've really come to see this human form as simply a vector, a portal, a gateway for many other aspects of myself that they're in different star systems, in different dimensions. We are all connected by the same oversoul, and ultimately, like you said, all the way back to source, right? So there really is no division. There is no us and them, unless you're hanging out in third dimensional reality, where that is the definition of reality, where there is polarity and duality and us and them. So there really is no right or wrong. There is no one truth. There are multiple truths, and it's kind of this giant nested reality, worlds within worlds game that we get to play. I think what's really exciting for me in my work is that at this particular time on planet Earth, the human collective is in a major ascension process and a major awakening process and a major vibrational shift, and that the planet herself has made this shift already. This is a really exciting adventure, project, if you will. And I have the pleasure of watching people and guiding people and accelerating people into a multidimensional remembering, where it may begin with just, oh, my spirit guide, right, who looks very human, and then realizing that's one of my higher selves, and then going well beyond that until we're frankly in kind of a Star Wars theme with all sorts of different forms of consciousness with their particular innate skills and abilities. What is this? It's really just divine technology. What looks like magic to a third dimensional perspective is simply advanced spiritual technology. So that's been my experience. The magic of multidimensional reality is astounding. And I will just add that one thing I've noticed is especially in people I work with, and then even myself, we tend to judge the human experience in human form as less than. All my aspects took it upon themselves to correct me on that and help me understand I'm the linchpin through which all of them are able to come and work on behalf of the human collective. And without this form, this identity, none of that's going to happen, right? So, I mean, gosh, I could talk for 3 hours straight, but that is what comes to mind initially.
I'm not sure what I did, but I switched my screen. Okay. Yeah, just a whole bunch of stuff came to me there. About 5 years ago, I was getting this not to ground into the earth anymore. And so when you said that the earth has already made that transition, and I was sort of told to start having the higher level people ground into the universe. And that it just all made sense then when you were saying that. And another thing that I had never thought about was our guides being versions of us. But I mean, it totally made sense when you said that. I mean, it makes sense on so many levels, right? And another thing too was I've been recently reading Ken Wilber's books, and he talks about that integrate. Ascend and integrate. So yeah, and us being a linchpin, there's all levels, physical and energetic, and in every way, and it all builds upon each other. And so if you take one out, everything above it crumbles. So yeah, now I suddenly feel really important. Thanks.
It's a perspective shifter, definitely. Yeah.
Rachel? Yes, absolutely. You know, we're here, right? This is not an accident, you know, where we have a body, where we have friends, we have relationships. We're here right now for a reason, and we're beautiful, amazing, divine beings. There's nothing less divine about us because we are living on a planet. Like, absolutely, you know, and for all the people who, I think we've all seen the people who just want to go home and they don't think, you know, they don't value being on Earth and they're having a really hard time. And that's really understandable. If you identify like as a star seed, and if you know that you have family elsewhere and, you know, you're more comfortable in another place, like I can totally understand wanting to be in a different, you know, reality, a different galaxy, a different star system. But the beauty is being right here, right now, and embracing all that we have, because we can't ascend without our body here. That's, you know, this is where we are. We're bringing all of this amazing multidimensional love and wisdom through us. Like, we're becoming something new. So I love that you said that. And I love that you're helping to give people permission to be so amazingly human, you know, like we're redefining what it is to be human, and we have to embrace that in order to really be able to relax into being here.
Yeah, there's a couple points there. I forget how I said it. Was we have to make ourselves small to be the way we've been living, when we're actually so much bigger than that. And it's time for us to let ourselves be that bigger person. And I so get, as you know, having trouble being on this earth. Like I big time had trouble with emotion. Like it just gets in the way, and I just like, yeah, just leave me alone. Let me be, let me do, and you know. Yeah, Rachel helped me a lot with that, and now it's okay. You know, I'm not bothered by it. I can have the emotional experience, and I can have it end quickly and move on from there, which is really nice. And having experience in other dimensions, and then coming your awareness back to Earth and how heavy and how slow it has been on Earth, it can really be frustrating sometimes until you realize and you get this conversation going and you realize all this stuff, and then you have more compassion for yourself. Like, oh yeah, I know how to do it. I can do anything instantaneously. There's a lot of stuff, but here I'm going to have the experience the human way, and then you appreciate that human experience, which I finally gotten to that point, which I'm really happy about. And granted, there are things that we could do without experiencing here, but I think they all have value. And so, Rachel, I wanted you to talk about the chakras and the difference that change makes in the three-dimensional chakras to the fifth, and why it's important that we start looking at that and changing, and what are the benefits of that?
Sure. So there are just some different viewpoints on this. Like Jim Self, one of my favorite people, he sees the new chakras as triads. So the outline is a little bit different than what we're used to thinking of them as the three-dimensional, regular chakras. So, you can look more into that if that resonates with you. I like to use what the Pleiadians were saying through Nora Harold, and that we're just looking at the new kind of fifth dimensional energy on top of the existing chakras where we think they are, all that. So why do we have two energy systems? Well, we have a third dimensional and a fifth dimensional. They're braiding together, we're upgrading, and so we're kind of in transition mode right now. A lot of us are living in the fifth dimension a lot of the time already. So that's really good to note. There's really, we can talk about this in a binary way, in on third dimensional, on fifth dimensional, but that's not really how we're working right now. It's so much more fluid than that. So I'll talk about third dimension and fifth dimensional chakras. But again, we're all of them at the same time. We're none of them at the same time. Our brains aren't really understanding what's happening right now, and that's really okay. That's how it's supposed to be. So if this is confusing, then that's totally fine. It doesn't need to go into your brain to make sense. But as fifth dimensional beings, which just means we're accessing the new rules of being alive. We are lessening the load of what we're carrying. In fact, to be truly fifth dimensional beings, we cannot bring baggage with us. We can't have conditioning with us in the fifth dimension. And so when we're accessing these fifth dimensional energy centers, it means that we are priming ourselves, we're preparing ourselves to be beings who don't have artificial conditioning from the third dimension. So that means all of us is just us, just our high dimensional energies. We don't have what your teacher said you were, and all the insults that you received in middle school. None of that is affecting you anymore. So that's basically where we're going. And these fifth dimensional chakras are priming you in that energy. They're it's like you're taking a bath in that energy to cleanse you and clear you out, and to get your body used to having a higher frequency. So there are some new words that can go along with that. And you want me to say what the words are? Okay, so we just start down at the root chakra. The word for that is excitement. So when we feel in the root chakra, we can feel the vibration of excitement and have that vibrate to that. And then you go up, and we're going to joy in the sacral center. And we feel that vibration of joy. And then we go up, and we're feeling confidence. And then at the heart, we're feeling compassion. And then at the throat, freedom. And then the third eye is power. And then the crown is connection and expansion. And so if you can feel up and down your body right now and the difference of just connecting with those vibrations, you'll feel something. So maybe different. Like I feel lighter, more expanded, more dense in my light body. So however you're feeling is totally fine. But doing that once a day, a couple times a day, it'll help you remember that you're ascending. It'll help you connect with your higher self in a greater way. And it'll do a lot for clearing you without you needing to clear. Like you're just literally bypassing, you're transcending the stickiness of the third dimension.
I love that stickiness. When I first heard you talk about the chakras in that way, with those words, those specific words, those words were, to me, they were the right words. Mm-hmm. And I never fully felt the old way, but yours made total sense to me. Like those were the words that I use for the things that I want and stuff, that freedom and connection and power, that not power the way we do in the world, but power, the real power, right, from source. So Adrian, can you add to this?
Oh, sure. I'm just writing those down. Those resonate so highly. I do, well, before I go there, I'll just say that was my story. I used to say I didn't want to be here. I think I got off on the wrong stop on the intergalactic tramway. But once I awakened and have really stepped into my role here, it's been a total game changer. So I do a lot of clearing work for people, both working with them on the negative programming, but also undue interference from what we would consider, negative entities, etc. It appears to be one of my specialties. Lucky me. And so when you walked us through that, I lit up like a Christmas tree, and I realized that you have just handed over more divine technology. It's a shortcut. It's a shortcut. It's a really fast, we can work with the violet flame. We can go to Arcturus and work with some of the Arcturians to get our fields clear. We can do the cosmic flush, which Cameron Day has put out there. There are all these different modalities, but turning on this chakra system and this higher vibration, it's kind of like it renders the other dimensional experience null and void, is what I'm hearing. So it's a matter of where you're choosing to operate. There's nothing right or wrong or better or lesser. It's simply a different experience. And where is the affinity? Where's the resonance? Now we have this option, and it's not just at the individual level, it's the entire collective is beginning to make this shift with a lot of assistance from people like us who decided we were going to come in and kind of turn the lights on. So thank you. I love these words, and it all, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Having the permission to be ourselves too, to be our full big selves is priceless. I mean, and like you, Adrian, I actually have done a lot of work with entities and such in the past. And that's one of the things that the life cards do, is give people permission to realize their power and that they have control of stuff, and they're not at the mercy of all the weird stuff that they might see or stuff. Like, I don't know. I'll go. Like, I went to a photographer one time, and then when I went to pick up my pictures, she's like, all of a sudden, I said to her, "You see stuff, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah," and I'm terrified. And so to be able to help people like that who are starting in, they're kind of in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's still a valid place for that teaching and for that help, to help those people sort of come through. I'm getting a vision of a veil, like come through the veil. So Rachel, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a unique journey, and there's no right or wrong way to do anything. You know, when I was a teenager, I was living in a really active house. I mean, we would call it haunted. I'm not crazy about that word, but that's what it was. It was like half the movie Poltergeist and half like some other crazy thing. It was insane. And I was terrified. And if I had available someone that could help me clear myself or clear out the house, like that's what I was looking for, I wouldn't have been able to make the jump from that state of fear to this. Like that wouldn't have worked for me. And so a lot of people right now really need someone to walk them through raising their vibration, dealing with past trauma. Like not everyone can just simply make the jump from like what you're saying, RoseAnn, like being kind of all of a sudden awake and seeing things that are scary to having the shortcut. Like that's just not everyone's thing. And some people really are here to experience the slower climb, and there's nothing wrong with that either. You know, it's like hiking. Do you want to take the trail right to the top and, you know, really get in shape and be out of breath and probably have to stop a couple times? Or do you want to just automatically go on the winding path around so you can see all 360 degrees of what's around you? It's just a personal choice. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
I love that visual. That was kind of how I had seen our journey before. It was a spiral, and never, like always coming back to the same things, but always at a new level of understanding and awareness. And yeah, so that was interesting. Something else that came up with on another mastermind that Rachel and I were on was telepathic support. And some of you know that I'm seeing people, I see people's divine self, and I am seeing more people with double auras, and I call them the new humans. But they exemplify this, you know, like the third and the fifth, right, together, and that they will help other people. They will help more to bring that transition and everybody faster. Have had any of you had that experience with others, or a similar something like that?
I can't say that I have personally with double auras. I just start seeing all of their galactic selves. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen the double aura, but when I'm talking to people more and more, I'm like aware of the jobs they're doing in other places. So that's really cool, Adrienne.
Yeah.
You two are very connected to that. Yeah. The other thing that I have noticed too is that there is an actual DNA change. And I believe scientists are starting to record that now too, which I find very interesting. I also kind of, this is sort of a little bit off topic, but I find it interesting that our society, like over the last 100 years or so, has put science in the forefront. When you actually look at it, science has just been catching up and documenting what the spiritual world has already known. And so it'll be interesting when they both catch up and kind of play nice. That would be good. And I know, like in Neil, you have the psychology and the coaching together. And to me, that's a real world example of the two coming together. and being able to use the best of both to support people and to support the world and the transition and awakening. Okay, so if anybody has any questions of anybody, please feel free to ask. And or if there's anything else that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Saza?
I do. Yeah, I'm just drinking all that I'm hearing. I love it. I don't have, I guess I don't feel that I have the fortune of having your ladies' knowledge and experience, but there some of the things that you say I can relate to. For example, the fact that I always felt that there was a mistake. I shouldn't have been here. Like I said, they sent me out wrong ride or something. That is a race, the whole thing.
Okay.
Like the connection and TDR is a little.
Okay, Zaza, we can't.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now we can hear you.
All right. I'm sorry if I'm breaking up, but yeah, those words, because I usually balance the chakras before I fall asleep. So those words were really interesting, and I immediately felt that they were pulsing. So just hearing the words. So I can't wait to put that in practice. That was really interesting. And so I have one question, because obviously I don't have your knowledge, but lately when I do my relaxation meditation, at the end I am just face, and there's nothing else, which it makes it a bit difficult for me to come back. Like I have to want to do it. But is that part of the experience that this shift that's occurring that you're talking about, that the going to another dimension, getting ready, is that part of it or not? Can you hear me?
I couldn't quite hear. So you're saying, like, are you astral projecting during your meditations, or you feel like you're going to a different place and you don't want to come back? Is that what you said?
I have no idea what it is.
Maybe you could write it in the chat.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Saza. So if you could put it in the chat, that would be great.
It's you that experience that.
Oops, we've lost her completely.
All right. Well, I'll answer what I think maybe she's talking about, and generally as well. Like, a lot of us are having new access to like superpowers. Like we can go to different dimensions, we can talk to different beings, and even if it feels like just your imagination, that's okay. Just play with it all. Like, it doesn't need to mean anything. It doesn't need to be proven. It doesn't need to feel 100% right. Just play with it. And if you feel like you're having an experience and you don't want to come back, don't. Like, have fun, play, and you'll fall asleep. It's not like you're going to be out there forever. I think she says in the chat, floating through space at the end of my meditation. Fun, right? Like, do it. As long as you're enjoying yourself, there's no harm in any of that. I think she does fall asleep. Yeah, so you're totally cool. You're totally fine. Just play. If you're worried that you're spending too much time meditating, I know this isn't your experience, but in case someone out there is like, oh, but I can't meditate all day. Well, if you're not meditating all day, don't worry about it. If you want to meditate all day, there's a way that you can and that you'll still be supported. So just do whatever you want and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, and there's the working meditation as well, where you can be in that meditative state and just carry on through your day. And that I have experienced, and it's pretty freaking magical. It's amazing. That's my preferred state, I'll tell you. And what even amazed me even more was that I could drive. I could go for coffee with friends. I could do everything, and I could function and be present and still be like, have that total connection feeling, and that feeling that I'm also watching everything that's going on, which I really enjoy that. Adrian, you've been quiet now.
Yes, what you're just describing is what I think most of us are being tasked with. In the words of a lot of guidance I channel for other people, is not just the ascension process, whereby we reconnect with our higher selves, our oversoul, our monads, on, but the descension process of allowing some of these incredible wise forms and aspects of consciousness to descend and animate the physical and begin to perceive and function in this plane of existence. And I did a trip recently, and I was in that mode. And, you know, honestly, I'm in that mode most of the time now. And it really struck me how much transformation occurred as a result of me allowing that descension. I see it like the inverse pyramid. From people I was gathering with at a formal kind of gathering, to the flight attendant, to a gentleman in the security line. I think this is what we are meant to do here, is to be the walking embodiment, portals, gatekeepers, interdimensional gateways, sub-collective realities is what we're beginning to create in a higher vibrational zone. I've been told by the Arcturians that just a small group existing in a higher vibrational reality creates a field in which somebody right next to us who isn't interested in any of this work, not even self-development work, will flip into a different octave. So we're being watched to see how creative we are, right? So it's a process of remembering there's that ascension process, but then descension, allowing all of these crazy, amazing aspects of consciousness to work through us. And again, with that hierarchical programming, we're so conditioned in this reality to think that we're small, right? And those who know are kind of outside of us, especially in the galaxy. And in fact, we are being watched to see just how creative we get, what technologies we bring in, how we choose to create certain constructs, how we choose to collaborate, right? Moving out of paradigms of competition into collaboration more and more, right? Like Rachel said, I love it, redefining what it means to be human. Have you all seen the movie Doctor Strange? Hello? You're seeing a lot of these themes come through. So in addition to kind of all of that, what you've spoken about, to speak to Zaza, that is the beginning of the awakening process. It's like to peel off from this physical perceived reality and begin to gain a freedom that is undefined. I mean, that's potential unmanifest before it becomes manifest, right? So you're beginning, what I was told is you're beginning to come back into your creator status, which is one that the egoic human mind has a hard time even grasping, because it is not a world of labels and definitions. It's outside of that. So explore, float, and sleep. You're right where you're supposed to be.
I love that. Thank you, Adrian. Also, too, I have noticed that from I was brought up Catholic, and so I have that reference point of that's all this stuff that was that's happening now. That's what the Bible was talking about. That's what Jesus was teaching us. And saying, you have all these, everything I can do, you can do, and more. This is what he was talking about. And I think it's amazing that we're getting there. And I love that you mentioned that we're being watched, to see what we do and what we can do. I've actually experienced that kind of early on. All these angels were there, and I'm like, what do you want? Right? It's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? And they're like, we just want to see what you do. We want to see where you take this. We want to see, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, help me out then. Neil, do you have any questions?
Most of, just a comment, most of the growth and stuff I've done in my own life, I've been alone, so I don't know a lot of the language that you are talking about. Sitting in my office, I don't come up with the language. But I have some experiences or experience that I think probably relates closely to what you're talking about. I just don't have labels for it. I've done a lot of energy work, a lot of trauma work, with clients and on myself, because I've had a lot of trauma in my life. And I've occasionally had to deal with entities, with clients, past lives, been quite successful and often quite fast. I had a client come to me one time, and I forget what happened the first session. The second session, she said, and she's clairvoyant, she said, well, I've been sexually abused in all of my lives, and I remember them all back to the beginning. And I want to clear all that, and I want to reconnect with my divinity, and we have to do it in this session. Well, I long ago learned if somebody wants something in this session, the best way to handle it is just do it. If they're that ready, although it can be scary. And we did. And she went from several years of living as a hermit to getting a job. She's now married and happy, and it's at least 15 years ago that event happened. At this stage, she's a good friend. It's a small community. So I know a lot of things change when we work with energies, and I feel energies. I also recognize that I'm more. I don't know what that means, but if we didn't have our bodies, how could we feel anything? And what we get through feeling is tremendously important in our own evolutions, I believe. Anyway, I'm kind of yammering here, but I haven't had the language like this other dimensions and so on. But I can sometimes feel like when I'm with somebody, and even over distances with the internet, I feel them. I feel that and one of the things I learned to do was, before I have a session with anybody, I take a good look at my own body. Am I clear? Or do I have any aches or pains or anything? And then when I'm with the person, if I suddenly get a pain in my knee, I know it's not mine. So I inquire what's going on, and it'll usually turn out they've got a pain in their knee that they're dealing with. So that's transpersonal. And if I do have to get into a special kind of place for this, but I sometimes sense connection with everything. And that's good. At one level, I'm separate, but on another level, there's no separation. We're part of something. Anyway, that's me making, I don't know what language to use. I don't know what, does this relate to what you're talking about?
It absolutely does, Neil. You're describing experiences that we've all had and continue to have. It's beautiful. I love it. And that you have that level of connection to people, to your clients, to be able to feel for them and what they have. And I know, Rachel, that you've talked about there being a waiting list of beings to come here, specifically because we can feel. So if you'd like to talk about that, Rachel, I'd love it.
Sure. And just for you, Neil, I grew up like this, and seeing guides and angels and spirits and connections with people and psychic and all that. And I didn't have words for this for most of my life. I mean, really, just the last few years have there been a language for it, truly, where we could talk to other people. There's always been some channeling, but it was very dense. We haven't really been able to all talk about this until very recently. And so you're not missing anything. Like, you're not any less than all of us here. No one is, but just for your knowledge, like, you're here too. You're us. And it's really beautiful, the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for doing that work and being who you are. As you were talking too, I felt so much Arcturus energy. I'm sure Adrian did too. So you guys might want to talk.
What kind of energy? What are you?
Adrian, why don't you take over, because you're much more connected to that group than I am.
Okay, so as soon as you began talking, Neil, I heard that you are a wisdom keeper. So let that phrase hit you, go into your heart chakra, just reflecting back to you who you truly are, right? So you're coming from a higher plane of existence, and you have a multidimensional aspect known as the wisdom keeper. And I happen to know you because on Arcturus, I am the lotus keeper. You are a librarian. You manage archives on Arcturus. So pay attention in your body as this information is coming to you, if it resonates and where it's resonating for you. So part of the reason you are on this call today is to begin to activate this new awareness of your expansive self. So think about now in the third dimensional perspective of how you operate what kind of library you have, what kind of information you manage, what kind of information you distribute, and begin to look for the parallels in the way that you work. This is what I do. I reflect back to people, free from distortion, who their greater selves are, pieces of them. So go ahead.
Well, I was just going to relate something from my childhood, which was quite a long time ago. My mother used to read. Well, she read a lot, but she'd read to us kids stories. And in a lot of the stories, there was a character would come up, the wise old man. and one time I asked her, could I be a wise old man? And of course, she was always encouraging. She was an amazing woman. So the issue of wisdom has been a really important theme for me in my life.
Mm-hmm. Not
that I ever claim I'm wise, but other people have made comments. But anyway, that's a little aside, but somehow connected to what you're saying.
Yes, that's a parallel. That's a piece of evidence from this temporary lifetime that connects you with that. And I didn't know any of this in this lifetime until 3 years ago. I had nothing going on before that. So I stayed in character, so to speak, until it was time. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things there. Divine timing, right? And having the patience to wait for the right time. That's a skill set in itself. But Neil, the wisdom thing. You know, when you and I were chatting through Facebook a few days back, I kept getting to ask you to impart your wisdom in a call to other coaches. And so that's what I was actually asking, if you'd be interested in setting up a call about that, about just everybody talking about coaching and helping people. And now I get why. I love this stuff.
Yeah. Well, we always communicate on multiple levels. So, yeah. There's another dimension. You mentioned, Rachel, you used the word channeling. And I came across that a number of years ago, the word. I didn't understand it. But then I read somewhere, somebody described several different kinds of channeling. And the one that I connected with was just intuitive knowing. I mean, I don't hear voices. I don't know where it's coming from. But so often, again, it's with people. I just know. Now, I'm not so brazen as to say this is what it is, but I check. But I couldn't count the number of times I've had a new client. We start to talk and they get a puzzled look in their face and said, "How did you know?" You've probably all had that experience.
Yeah. Well, just before this call, RoseAnn was telling me that, she needs a question in order to make a video, let's say, because the question connects us with the answer in a different place. It's not, the answer's not in here. It's out here. And sometimes we need the person in front of us with the problem or the question or whatever to kind of pull it through. So yeah, everybody, we're all channeling stuff if we're going beyond the mind. It's a really natural thing for humans to do, especially now as more of us are connecting beyond the mind.
Mm-hmm.
I really, in the past, it was referred to as having this gut feeling and trusting your gut. And, but now I have that feeling too, that it's more and more, it's less strategic and planned, and it's more just always living in that constant state of a connection to everything and everybody.
Yeah.
And so, as soon as I see you, I know something, or and that's that's how we're going to be as a people now.
25 years ago, I worked briefly in a mental health center, and they required a treatment plan for each client.
Mm-hmm.
And that made absolutely no sense to me. So I wrote the treatment plans after I'd seen the client, because I didn't know what was going to happen. So we sat down together.
Exactly. There's another thing that I've been curious about is, and it's a chicken and egg sort of thing too, is that I suspect that there's something different in our brains that that's the physical component of our being able to be so connected and to know things and hear things and see things. And so I'm wondering if anybody actually knows anything about that. I'm just speculating. So if you've worked in mental health, like it seems like there could be a slippery slope there, to schizophrenia and all that sort of stuff. I know we're getting off topic here, but I find it fascinating, the physical part of the mental capability or the energetic capability and how it manifests here.
Well, I don't know much about it, but I know the brain can heal. The brain can change itself. It's one of the difficulties I have with the traditional treatment for addiction. There's a premise there that once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. It's fixed, and there's no question that alcohol use changes the brain. Now the trouble I have with that is that, it's a statement of hopelessness. Mm-hmm. The two premises of the standard 12-step treatment are: I'm an alcoholic, and therefore I'll always be an alcoholic, and I'm powerless. So, and for women, what woman needs to be told once more that she's powerless? But that goes for men too. Exactly. Of course we can change, and if we stop drinking, our brains adjust to the change. It may take a couple of years, but the changes do occur. And most of us don't go through the experience of having the autopsy on our brains to see what the changes were. and we wouldn't be around to get the answers anyway. So, but changes do occur.
Mm-hmm. I can speak to that a little bit. So I did watch a medium, spirit medium, had her brain scanned while she was doing her work. Mm. And what I think it was a neuroscientist who was facilitating the study saw was that there are definitely areas of her brain that were lighting up. It was different. It was demonstrably different. So as far as brain activity goes, I'd like to speak to mental health because my team has asked me this year to bring my abilities to this field, and it's been slow going because in the third dimensional world that is full of minefields, right, when it comes to liability, etc. So I've been moving very slowly, but one thing for sure I can tell you, based on having done hundreds of clearings now of people's fields, is that the propensity to drink alcohol is often driven by entities in the field. This isn't just a standalone decision somebody is making, and it's the classic, you seem like a different person when you drink. It's because you are. And you have, in my world, I do a lot of channeling with ascended masters and archangels and galactic collectives and people's spirit guides. So cohabitation, right, is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I cohabitate with these wise teachers to bring forward information that's useful. But then you can have a negative cohabitation, which I see an awful lot of. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud here because the field of mental health, for the most part, it seems like has been operating without all of the information. And of course, I haven't run out there and started, you know, trying to explain this to everyone because it's very confronting information. But it's important to know that people really do need some help clearing their space in order then to do their own work, as I see it, right? So oftentimes I'll hear from people like, after a clearing, I sit by myself and instead of all these voices, it's just quiet, right? So it's very similar. Yeah.
Adrienne, it's so funny. Well, it's not funny, but I've been thinking about this a lot because when I was a teenager and I had this big thing happen, my parents brought me to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist wanted to put me in a facility. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I know I'm not crazy. Well, crazy is a horrible word to use for that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know I don't belong there. I don't belong drugged. I don't belong, etc. And luckily I had a mother who agreed with me. My dad didn't. He would have been fine either way, I think. But my team has also told me the same thing. So maybe we should talk and team up because with my intuitive art, it's being used in therapy already. So it might be a good like doorway in, and then we can get people to do intuitive art for themselves and have a clearing with you. So that might be kind of cool to talk about. I actually wrote an article 2 weeks ago for therapists about this. So like maybe we should team up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like, you know, here comes the divine connections and coordination happening. A lot of my clients are therapists. They're counselors. And I'll just tell you all a quick story. I think you'll find it interesting. So one of them works with a colleague who's a psychologist or psychiatrist, and he seemed to shift again. I had cleared him once, and he seemed to shift again. And so I just quickly looked, like RoseAnn was saying, I mean, we don't really need to do anything elaborate anymore. It's just a quick, like, I'm just going to tune in to that person. And sure enough, you know, here's his special friend in his field that is not so nice. And I also got with it the information that he picked this friend up in a mental, like the psych ward of a hospital. And so I verified that information with her. So you see, you can walk into the middle of a psych ward and you've got lots of people. Yes, they are talking to beings. They may not be in the physical, but they're there. So we sent him on his way, right? Got him clear again. But this is what I mean. There's just a level of unknowing about what is actually impacting humanity. So yeah, I would love, let's schedule a time to do a virtual like coffee chat and figure this out, because I've been kind of like, well, I've met with a therapist that refers people to me, but this is still kind of new territory for her. Meanwhile, I joke that I could just sit at home with a phone book and just start clearing, you know. There is so much work to do. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad you guys got to be here together and find that connection. There's another interesting thing that's going on here. There's alcoholism in my past as well, not my personal, but family. And one of the things I notice a lot about if I go into a bar or a restaurant bar, it's loaded with entities. And I find that interesting too, Neil, in that you have worked with alcoholics, and you know, noticing things like that about them as well. So I think there might be something to my mother when she don't go to bars. It might have been good advice.
She might have been right on, but she might have had different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
No, I hadn't thought of entities in that context, but going into a bar, typically, as I just described it, as a lot of toxic energy in here.
Mm-hmm.
Get me out of here. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And more likely to occur where alcohol is being consumed. Mm-hmm. But lots of other places, you can walk into a group and say, oh, this is bad. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And another group of people that look much the same, it's comfortable. So, again, different language. Maybe we're sensing some of the same things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to just share briefly a divine technology that only came in about 6 months ago. And so there's standard clearing, where you just simply send these entities back into the light. I work with the Arcturians in a vortex to do that. And then my multidimensional aspect, the Lotus Keeper, showed me you can do what he called a lotus clearing. It looks like sacred geometry. You put it in a person's field, and their entities also, their higher self agrees, and their entities also participate, and the entities turn into allies. I've done probably 20 of these now, and they are amazing. So just so you know, that exists too. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Have you had any experience with that, Rachel?
Well, I have a family that's highly addicted to lots of stuff. Like, my parents were hippies. They still smoke pot. They both drink. I think they, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say too much because it's going to be public here, but I've got cousins and relations that have been in rehab multiple times. And I used to smoke cigarettes for, I don't know, over 10 years. And I always hear this, right, Neil, about how you have an addictive personality. You're always going to be addicted. And a lot of friends and relatives who smoked cigarettes say, like, they've, you know, maybe quit for 20 years and they still crave one every day. I don't. I mean, pretty much once I gave up smoking, that was it. Like, I haven't had a craving or anything. So your brain definitely changes. You're not an addict forever. It's a, you know, you can choose how you want to go about that.
That's the key word.
Yeah.
You choose.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped. It was a very, very serious alcohol problem. Many years ago, well, 40 years ago, I stopped, and sure, I missed it, particularly in the first year, but I just remind myself that I've stopped using alcohol, period. I didn't change anything else. I still ate at the faculty club and had my lunch there, and with the same alcoholic colleagues. um, but I found that after a couple of years, after maybe 3 years, it just never came up anymore. There were times, you know, it'd be nice to have a beer now, on a hot day working outside or something like that, but it just it ceased to be, alcohol ceased to be part of my identity. I was not defined by what I used to do. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I'm not recovering. I've recovered, but I've moved on from that too. It's not part of my identity. And that took a while. It took maybe the outside of 3 years. It was gone. It's probably faster than that, but I don't know what I'm exercising there when I say 3 years. But that's one of the important things that has to be changed to deal with an addiction. It's changing the identity. Because the person who identifies as an alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic and I haven't had a drink in a year, is obviously much more vulnerable than the person who says, I don't drink and I stopped that a year ago. As the former is still defining himself or herself by what used to be. Yeah. Just the way people do with, you know, I had a colleague who, in the first 2 sentences, you'd find out that she was a survivor of sexual abuse as a child. Well, she was in her 50s, but that was her identity, not just her history. When she came to me and said, I'd like to finally deal with this, we talked about it, and I said we could turn this into ordinary memory. Yes, you remember it. Yes, it had an effect on you, but it no longer defines you. Not part of your identity. Well, I learned not to say that because she got really scared and said, well, if it's just a memory, not part of it, who would I be? Who would I be? And she never went ahead with the treatment. So that was too scary a thought. That was her identity.
That's really interesting, how we identify ourselves and how we hang on to that identity.
Yeah.
Being open to letting that go, to realizing that we're much more than any of these labels. That's important. I think putting these labels on is a real disservice, especially in right now, like in the ADD, ADHD, and that whole autism, Asperger's, all that stuff. When I actually find that those kids are exceptional, and some people are actually saying, you know, like the rest of us have to catch up to them, not have them slow down to where we are.
If when I went to school, they had any kind of testing for disabilities and so on, I would have been screened out.
Yeah.
Because I had such an extreme form of dyslexia before the word was invented that they would not have let me in a normal class. I didn't find out, and still without the word, when I was in my final year of high school, I was having, my grades had always been good. Final year of high school, they sent me to a reading specialist. The small town hired a new town librarian, and who happened to be a reading specialist. The first time ever had such an entity in our in our little town. And she put me through all these tests and then said, "What are you doing in grade 13?" It went up to grade 13 in those days, in that jurisdiction. And I questioned what the heck she meant. She said, "Well, you're reading at the grade 4 level." I couldn't read. But that's where I learned to listen and to hear. And so my grades were good because the teachers taught stuff, and I got it from that, not from reading. And the school counselor said, "Well, you're not smart enough to go to university." And I said, "Well, I'm going." And I got my undergraduate degree, and then I went to be a high school teacher, and I had an opportunity to take another set of reading tests. And lo and behold, I'd improved. I was up to grade 10 level by the time I had graduated from university. And it wasn't until many years later, after master's degree and a PhD and so on, that I met up with a biologist healer at a energy psychology conference I was at, and we got into the subject, and she said, "Well, can I help you with that?" And I said, "Sure." And she put her hands on my head and did some stuff, and it went away. I didn't get the words mixed up anymore. But I didn't let it stop me. And if in a modern school system, I would have been screened out at an early stage. So here I am. Mm-hmm. I'm not practicing psychology anymore. I do some coaching, and I'm focusing on writing and preparing a course and so on.
I think you have lots to teach the world there, Neil.
Well, I just have to keep staying vertical to do it. Some things are catching up to me, but so far so good.
Awesome. We're running at 1 hour and 20 here, and I just want to ask Joy if she has any questions, and then we should start wrapping up. Can you hear us, Joy? Not sure. Joy is in Africa, so her and Zaza, I think, are at the same time. It's quite late there, I think.
Yummy.
Okay, can you turn your sound up a little bit?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
No, I joined late, so I don't really have a question. It's very interesting.
Couldn't quite understand that. I heard Rachel.
I joined late.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there will be a replay. I'll have it up tomorrow. And so then you can catch the whole thing. But if you have any questions right now, go ahead and ask, or you can type it in the chat too if you'd like.
Okay. My son has OCD. Can you hear me?
Your son has
OCD.
OCD, yeah.
And when I hear somebody speak about, my other son has ADD. So I have two sons with these mental challenges. And sometimes I wonder if somebody explains it to them a bit differently, if it would make a difference to what they think about these disorders. Does that make sense?
Okay, I didn't quite get what you were wondering if.
Okay. I think it's the computer that is difficult. The audio is strange.
Okay, I've turned my sound up, so I should be able to hear you now better. Okay, so you have one son with OCD and one with ADD. Oops. Okay, I'm going to ask Rachel, Adrian, Neil, if you have any comments based on what you could hear and on your psychic abilities here to help Joy and her boys.
I'll just briefly talk about it. I feel like Adrian probably has a more specific answer. So Neil's a great example, right? A lot of people right now with strong galactic channels, we come in with these kind of disadvantages or differences in how we learn, how we process things. And our society currently makes them into a negative, but really they're not. They're perfect expressions of who we are. It's just that we characterize them as negative things. But a lot of it has to do with how the energy we're pulling into this life affects the body that we're in, and how the energy merges with what we've got going on, on this dimension. So just from that perspective, just know that there isn't a problem. There's really nothing wrong. And I would encourage your children to feel out how they would naturally live their day if they could have total freedom over their day. And even if they're really small children and they won't understand what you're saying, have them feel into what naturally they'd want to do in that moment, because they're not trying to make a racket. They're not trying to be OCD even. There's something that is being blocked. They're not being able to naturally live out how they're supposed to and how they want to live. So that's where I would go with it. Being a parent, obviously you have to monitor that and see what would work best for you in your situation. But I feel like Adrian might have some more specific information that could help you. I don't know. It's just what I'm feeling.
Yeah. So I'll definitely validate everything that you just talked about. I want to mention a resource for you as the parent, because a lot of what's happening right now is you're having very advanced souls coming, very high vibrational souls with lots of innate experience coming into a denser reality that is chaotic, that is, for all intents and purposes, pretty crazy. And for them to cope with that reality, to a third dimensional human, it appears as if they have a disorder. So the resource I want to mention is the book, The Awakened Family by Shibari. She's a practicing psychologist, I believe. The Awakened Family. This is Arcturian paradigms. This is fifth dimensional living. And a lot of the guidance that I have channeled for my clients who have questions about their children, it's always the same. Our children are mirrors for us. So it's time for you also to look at what distortions do you have, what fears do you have, what anxieties do you have, that are being reflected back to you via your children. So, and then the last thing I picked up is that they would benefit greatly from connecting back to their higher self. So you don't need to be practiced in facilitating that. This would just simply look like quiet time to go within, to be still, to be in their heart. I think there are a lot of great meditations for children, probably on YouTube you could find, but making that a priority so that they have a chance to connect within. One of the most powerful original wounds that all of us experience as starseeds is the disconnection, perceived disconnection from our higher selves. It's very painful. So I'm just feeling around to see if there's anything else. Yeah, it's really about what is the world and the adults in their world trying to impose upon them and fix in them, and then turning it around and looking at what are our paradigms and what are we as the adults ready to shift now? And are we able to allow these children to be our teachers? So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Rachel and Adrian. That was awesome. Also, Neil, did you have anything to add to that?
With regard to your son with ADHD, there's quite a bit written in the business world about how, well, the catchy expression is, you're not ADHD, you're an entrepreneur. A lot of the same talents that a person with ADHD had are the same talents that an entrepreneur needs. And the way they suggest to harness that is to have a number of things going. So you work on this for a few minutes and then switch to this, and don't try to do 10 things at once. Do them one at a time, but switch often. And that can sometimes harness the energy of the ADHD. Anyway, that's the only thing that came to me while we're discussing this.
Oh, thank you very much. Boy, I should have the three of you on all the time to help people. This is great. Okay, so we've done quite a while here, and this is a huge topic, this whole area, and I'm sure we could talk forever about it. So I want to thank each of you for being here and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, and for asking questions, and for helping to disseminate this information into the world. So I'll give you, if there's anybody else would like to have closing comments, go ahead now, and then we'll sign off. Everybody's good? Alrighty, thank you again. And I'm RoseAnn Jansen for RevealYourLife.com, your no BS psychic for business and entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us, Rachel Arteleas, Dr. Neil, Adrian Trapani, and Joy and Zaza. Loved your questions. Thank you so much.
And thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.